We continue talking about the Baltimore Ravens 19-17 thrilling victory over the Detroit Lions with a special guest next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we return here with another episode of Locked On Ravens. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them Locked On sent you. We return here. It is Taco Tuesday. Our Taco Tuesday guest in Spencer Schultz back with us here in the video form, obviously in audio as well. That's not going away. But Spencer, this game on Sunday, this 19-17 victory, another crazy game in the Ravens 2021 season. Baltimore wins at 19-17 on the leg of Justin Tucker. Justin Tucker loves Detroit. You know, they should probably print a shirt that says that or something of that nature. How you doing today?
Doing fantastic. It was a third consecutive thrilling game. It was a 1 o'clock game in Detroit against a team that was without some resources themselves, and the Ravens found themselves struggling a little bit early, but there was moments where it felt like the Ravens started to figure it out. They were ultimately going to run away with the game like they were supposed to, and the cookie didn't crumble that way. They had adversity by the mouthful, and Lamar Jackson and Justin Tucker stole or pried a W out of the Lions' mouth in Detroit. It was an insane finish, an improbable finish, a 0.1% likelihood at one point in the game that the Ravens would pull it out, according to Next Gen Stats. And it just got crazier and crazier as the game wore on. But it was a lot of fun. It's a lot of great content. We're having a blast here, and I'm happy to talk some Ravens football with you, Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely, Spencer. And this crazy game, it really did feel like the chances of the Ravens winning were just so bleak at the end. I mean, the Lions kicked that go-ahead field goal. The Ravens have no timeouts. The 4th and 19 play, incredible by Lamar Jackson. But Jackson, I'd say Spencer was on for pretty much this entire game. It looked like he was throwing guys open. He was hitting guys in stride. And I know the box score, I guess people who look at the box score only, they see, 16-31, 287 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. That doesn't tell the whole story, though. Of course, Marquise Brown with those 3 balls that glanced off of his hands, that had a big impact on the game because the Ravens just could not put Detroit away early. So, Spencer, what did you see out of this Ravens offense, particularly with Lamar Jackson? And are you concerned at all with Marquise Brown because of those balls that he should have probably had?
Well, yes and no to the Marquise Brown question. It was similar to what we saw in Cleveland, but he didn't have that redeeming catch to kind of get the monkey off of his back or get rid of the yips or whatever it was. It was really interesting. He tweeted before the game and just simply said YAC, yards after the catch. And I thought that he had a really nice start to the game. He ran, I believe, like a deep crosser or maybe a shallow post and bent the ball all the way around, ends up getting a defender one-on-one, gives him a little move, a little hesitation, and runs right by them, gets like 12 yards, gets the Ravens down into scoring position. And I believe they ended up throwing a touchdown to Devin Duvernay on that drive, if I'm not mistaken. So I thought he had a strong start to the game. And then the drop started. It was one, then another, then another. 2 of them were utterly inexcusable. After watching back, I'm not sure if it was him thinking too much about yards after the catch or if it was him having a visor on in a dome that was clear and might have, made a little glare or something. It felt like he had trouble locating the ball even. It was bad, and it can't happen again. But like I said, Lamar Jackson and Justin Tucker bail it out. And I believe, somebody had mentioned, you said to me off screen, I think Tony Lombardi, someone of the sort, ends up mentioning that no one was happier about Justin Tucker's made 66-yard record NFL, otherworldly kick than Marquise Brown, because he would have costed the Ravens that game. And it was really disconcerting concerning to watch that happen on a day where Lamar Jackson was so pneumatic, so precise, like a surgeon with a scalpel, cutting through the Lions defense with his football and with his throws. And it was really disheartening. It felt like Sammy Watkins also comes open. A defender makes a great play just to get a fingertip on the ball, but it doesn't affect the flight pattern of the ball and ends up hitting him in the hands. He can't come down with it. But the most encouraging part of the whole scenario was that Lamar Jackson was really unfazed by the lack of success his receivers had. He didn't go back to Hollywood Brown much in the second half. I don't know if he even threw him another pass, but he continued to push the ball downfield. He actually posted the highest intended average air yards or average distance of target, whichever you want to say. Pro Football Focus had it at 19.9 intended air yards per attempt. Next Gen Stats had 19.3. I went back and looked through all of Next Gen Stats records going back to 2015 for average intended air yards per throw or average distance of target, and it was the highest in a week ever. And, obviously we're only 3 games in, and this game is an outlier that skews it a little bit, but it's fun to start putting these together once you get towards the middle of the season, as if the season ended today, Jackson would have posted the highest average distance of target at 12.4 yards per attempt through 3 weeks. That would beat Deshaun Watson's 11.2 in 2017 by a lot. 11.2 to 12.3 is a pretty significant margin, considering the third and fourth highest are 11.1 and 11.0 as well. So Jackson is just pushing the ball downfield fearlessly. I think he showed great poise in the pocket. He showed a willingness to beat them with his arm. And I do believe he's the best quarterback in the NFL on third or fourth and long, being at least 10 yards, because he did it twice. He airs a ball to the back of the end zone, finds the open man in Devin Duvernay, puts it where only he can get it. And Duvernay jumps up and extends his arms, but it didn't look like he really needed to. But he was playing it safe and wanted to make sure he fully committed, maybe something Marquise Brown should take note of in that one. And then again, at the end of the game, the Ravens get the ball back. Jackson isn't able to find his footing or find anything downfield for 3 downs. It's an impossible 4th and 19, and he just sits back there, calm as a cucumber, and throws the ball over top, gets a 36-yard gain, and allows his kicker to go win the game for them. And, it adds a little bit of extra zest that Tucker was able to hit a field goal that probably no kicker in the history of the NFL, maybe Janikowski at one point or something, but I don't know who else could have hit that kick in the history of the NFL other than Tucker, outside of playing in Denver. I know Jason Elam used to have a big boot, but anyway, it number one kind of detracts away, it feels like, from the fact that Lamar bailed the Ravens out of such an improbable situation. And number two, that Tucker ends up kind of stealing the show because he does hit an NFL record field goal, obviously. But Lamar Jackson was precise in this game. He was awesome. He does throw 1 interception, but it was 3rd and long, and you can't say they were out of field goal range knowing what Tucker did, but you don't know if they're going to run him out there for like a 64-yarder, 63-yarder at the time. I have to go back and check what the distance would have been. But that interception, he lobbed one up on 3rd and long, and it wasn't great, but if he didn't have anything else, it was kind of like a punt. So that was maybe his one negative play of the game, and it didn't really hurt the Ravens too badly. So I thought that he was just outstanding. I would like to see more RPOs in the passing game. I thought there was, for instance, a 3rd and 3 where the Ravens ran an inside zone to Latavius Murray. They could have just had an RPO attached to it. The only difference is that the inside zone would have happened and a receiver would have been running a route on the backside. And the only difference is that Lamar Jackson gets to make a decision based on what he sees. And as opposed to having Latavius Murray in your offensive line that's missing Ronnie Stanley, missing Tyree Phillips, missing J.K. Dobbins, missing Gus Edwards, instead of putting all of the pressure on them to get that 3rd and 3 or similar situations, you can instead attach an RPO in it and let your franchise quarterback, the one you're probably about to pay at least $250 million, if not $300, be the one to live and die with, kind of like what the Buffalo Bills do with Josh Allen. So I think you can just continue to load Lamar's plate mentally, and he's going to make you right more often than not. So definitely something I wish we saw more of, and I think would have helped even further. But you're right, Kevin, the box score doesn't show how great Lamar was. I think he was the 2nd highest rated passer from PFF. I'm curious to see what Sports Info Solutions total points added are, because that goes beyond EPA accounting for what the other 21 players on the field do and what the situation was. So I'm sure he'll be at least top 3 this past week in terms of total points added, because, again, that goes past EPA. So some fun metrics to look for, and I thought Jackson was awesome.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome too, Spencer. And quickly, before we head into our first break, that 4th and 19 play, Sammy Watkins gets the ball. Should he have gone out of bounds in hindsight?
No, he should not have. Every nanometer that he got, Kevin, ended up being the reason why the Ravens won that game. The fact that he went vertical towards the end zone instead of not gaining more ground ended up being every single centimeter needed for Justin Tucker to make that kick. So Sammy Watkins ended up being right.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think how you mentioned, 1 centimeter, 1 inch. that ball could have hit the crossbar and gone the complete opposite way. So, in hindsight, looking at it, seeing, he should have gone on a bounce, saved the time, but he dove forward, got an extra whatever it was, and that helped Justin Tucker kick that field goal to send Baltimore to victory. We're going to head into our first break, though. When we get back, we'll be flipping the field, talking about the Ravens defense, what they did well, what they didn't. So stay tuned for that. But hey, Ravens fans, this is Kevin Onstreicher with an incredible app everyone who buys gas needs to know about in Get Upside. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now. Use promo code TOUCHDOWN and get a bonus 25 cents per gallon on your first fill-up. That's up to 50 cents cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Just download the app for free and use promo code TOUCHDOWN to get up to 50 cents a gallon cash back on your first tank. Some people who drive a lot are making as much as $200 to $300 a month in cash back, and there's no catch. The cash back gets added right to your account. You can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or any gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code TOUCHDOWN to get up to 50 cents a gallon cash back on your first tank. That's code TOUCHDOWN. And we're back and better than ever. All eyes are on the gridiron as teams are back on to start another football season. As always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. With a new updated site and interface, even more odds and props and contests, BetOnline AG continues to be the number one source for everything football. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today to receive your 100% welcome bonus. That's double your initial deposit just for signing up. Don't forget to use promo code NFL100. From football, basketball, boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers for the 2021 season. BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. And we return here, our second segment of this Tuesday edition of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostreicher is still here with Spencer Schultz of Baltimore Beatdown. And Spencer, moving on to the defense, this Ravens defense struggled in a couple of aspects. Tackling was definitely the big one. It seemed like the Ravens could not get ball carriers down. The Lions have some talented playmakers on offense, but there are just plays. I know the one, DeAndre Swift on the right side of the field, I think it was the right side of the field, where Tyus Bowser misses, Patrick Queen misses. Those types of plays where the ball carrier doesn't get down, it can cost the team. And it kind of let the Lions creep back into it. And by the end of the game, where the Lions pick off Lamar Jackson, it kind of felt like, and it's kind of weird to say, but last week in week 2 against Kansas City, where on that fourth down play, if you pump the ball back to Patrick Mahomes, I think everybody in the stadium knew what Mahomes was going to do against a defense that was struggling. I kind of felt like the Lions were going to go down, at least get a field goal out of that last drive, and they did just that. Now Justin Tucker saves the day. But how much of a concern for you right now is the Ravens tackling on defense?
It's definitely a concern, but I think that there needs to be more layers of context to the situations. And Tyus Bowser's has been pretty concerning for me. I actually went back and was watching just as much tape as I could. I searched on NFL Game Pass, any play that had his name in it. And so I watched a lot of his reps. And the one area of his game, I think he's a really solid coverage defender. I think he's a solid run defender. I think he is a solid pass rusher. I think he's a balanced game, but I started to see some open field missed tackles, and he didn't have a ton of chances last year in those situations, but he definitely let a couple get away from him. And I tweeted on August 30th, and I said, I think the one area that Tyus Bowser really needs to improve in an increased role is open field tackling. And he has not. He has 5 missed tackles and has posted a 41.9 missed tackle rate through 3 games. That is by far the worst among all players with a linebacker designation in the NFL. It is abhorrent, it is terrible, and it needs to be corrected. I don't know how he can fundamentally change so quickly and make these adjustments. At this point, he's been playing football for a long time. He played college football. He's been played through an entire rookie contract in the NFL. It might just be a matter of losing battles to win wars and taking less aggressive angles, being calmer about it, and maybe letting guys run away, but not missing a tackle necessarily. And the same thing applies to Patrick Queen. I do think that Patrick Queen did have a solid game in some ways. He had a couple big tackles late in that game. Him and DeAndre Swift late in the hole, one-on-one, mano-a-mano, inside the red zone. Queen put him right on the ground, but he did have 2 missed tackles. He has 6 on the year, I believe. I think he's had actually 2 in each game. And that's actually lower than guys like Devin White and a couple other notable linebackers through 3 weeks. So a little bit of rust there, a little bit of, not having it all the way through. He's not a crazy experienced linebacker. He was actually a running back prospect out of college, a 4-star running back who played linebacker as well. LSU wants him at linebacker. He goes with that. only starts 1 year. So I think there is room for growth there, more so with Queen, but Bowser's have definitely been concerning for sure. I think that the Ravens simply need to rally better, rally more effectively, close out plays, but they didn't have a lot of guys up front. You can make a couple excuses that I think are reasonable. They didn't have a lot of guys. They're probably gassed. I think that the Lions also started doing a really good job getting their backs the ball in space and throwing them the ball underneath. And I went back and looked at what DeAndre Swift did through the first 2 weeks. He forced 7 missed tackles after the catch. That was tied for first in the NFL. So I think that looking at a guy like DeAndre Swift, who might be one of the most elusive, balanced running backs in the NFL, kind of has a similar skill set to Alvin Kamara in many ways. And you look at him forcing missed tackles and you say, okay, well, should he have made the play? Yes. Would you like for him to make the play and finish the play, make the tackle? Yes. But at the same time, DeAndre Swift gets paid too. These guys get paid too. So it's not to look at them and focus on the Ravens solely and say, oh, wow, these guys stink. But sometimes you also need to acknowledge the skill set and the talent and the greatness that other players are capable of too. But tackling is bad, needs to be better. The bright spot there, to sum it up, was Chuck Clark. I thought he had an outstanding day in the open field. He was putting on a tackling clinic. And I think that maybe Patrick Queen and Tyus Bowser could go have some conversations with Chuck Clark about what it takes to get down professional players in space. So I think Chuck Clark was rock solid, turned out an awesome day, and was one of the reasons the Ravens won the game, even though they did falter at the end defensively.
Yeah, the first quarter for Chuck Clark was phenomenal. He was everywhere and just continued that performance throughout the entire game. But talking about Chuck Clark, Spencer, his counterpart in Deshaun Elliott got injured in this game, was kind of in and out, coming back from the concussion. It seems like he has a muscle thing now, and we don't really know a lot about it, but the Ravens, they get Jimmy Smith back. So kind of talking about this injury type thing, Jimmy Smith is a huge addition to this defense, and he made a couple of nice plays in Detroit, but the Ravens do lose Deshaun Elliott. Dalen Hayes is now on IR. So those 3 players, Spencer, Jimmy Smith, Deshaun Elliott, and Dalen Hayes. Smith obviously being back, and Elliott and Hayes. Hayes is obviously out on IR, but with Elliott, we don't really know. How big of a addition back to the defense was Jimmy Smith in this game, and what could the losses of Elliott and Hayes mean to this defense?
Jimmy Smith was a huge addition. Beans was back on the field making plays. He was the only Raven who actually broke up a pass, got their hand on the football throughout that game on Sunday, and I think that he's going to be imperative for the Ravens. And it's nice kind of having him. I like Jimmy Smith in terms of usage at this point in his career, and to be what I like to call break glass in case of emergency role, which is when you're missing guys, that's when you can increase his snap count. But if, let's say, Deshaun Elliott's healthy and everybody's healthy aside from Jimmy Smith that you're reasonably going to have, decrease his snap count, keep him limited because he's such a high IQ player, because he has so much experience. There's a Ravens Wired from last week where he's explaining to Marlon Humphrey about how, hey, when, Kansas City goes with when Las Vegas goes with 2 running backs in the backfield, when they go from the I formation, that means that they can max protect and block everything. Pardon me, it was a Chiefs game. And they can max protect, and they're probably going to take a deep shot. So that's Jimmy Smith continuing to drop knowledge on the sideline actively on an all-pro player in Marlon Humphrey. So having a guy like that has that IQ back into the secondary is imperative to calm things down, communicate switches, communicate pre-snap, all that good stuff. So if they're able to get a couple healthy games out of Jimmy Smith here, who did actually line up as a safety, it looked like in 8 snaps, according to Pro Football Focus on Sunday, and they'll be able to mitigate some loss from Deshaun Elliott and able to round themselves together and hopefully go rally against a pretty decent Denver team that's beat up on some bad teams. And also then potentially a Colts game where the Colts are desperate for a win, but they're also extremely injured. Their offense has been anemic, and you're going to be at home on Monday night. So getting Jimmy Smith back is huge. In terms of the loss of Elliott, we kind of touched on it with Smith, but Elliott will be missed if he has to miss time, and maybe it's for the best. He also is coming off of a concussion. The Ravens are 2-1. They really could afford to be 2-2. It's early in the season. You're expecting that to be a tough game in Denver. So maybe thrusting Elliott, who not only is beaten but bruised and battered as well with a concussion and a thigh, giving him a little time to heal up, get him better for the second half might be in their best interest, as opposed to forcing him back out there or him forcing himself back out there in this game. But then Dalen Hayes, looked explosive, looked fast. It stinks. He had a lot of trouble keeping himself on the field at Notre Dame. He ends up being there through the age of 23 because he had a labrum injury, he had a back injury, he had a knee injury, a couple of things there. So unfortunately, we're seeing a similar start to his career. Doesn't mean, he's never going to be healthy and he'll never be a factor, but would have been a big help to keep him fresh in that game and have him not get healthy, because the Lions ultimately wore that Ravens defense down so much. I thought the Lions had a great game plan to say, hey, let's not make this too hard. They're really thin up front. They only have 4 defensive linemen and go from only 3 to 2 outside linebackers. We need to run the ball. We need to throw the ball underneath. We need to sustain long drives and gas this defense. And they did exactly that. So you have to give a ton of credit to the Lions for not making it too hard on themselves, for taking the low-hanging fruit and doing the simple, logical things, which are trying to sustain those longer drives. It paid off for them, and it basically won them the game. So moving forward, we don't know. We haven't gotten any word on, did Justin Houston test positive? Did anyone other than Jalen Ferguson test positive? Anything like that. So we don't know the vaccination status of any of them. But if they're gone for this Denver game, I fully expect it to be a loss, because you're just too thin to be forcing guys like Calais Campbell to not come off the field at 37 years old 2 straight weeks. It's too much. It's too much to overcome on the road twice in a row with all the travel included as well. So hopefully that's not the case, but it might be.
Yeah, and I thought that Broderick Washington showed some flashes in this one. I thought he played well in a much bigger role. Obviously, you have Justin Ellis in there, but you're right. Having those 4 guys out, I thought had a pretty big impact on the game, and the Ravens still able to come out with a win, but hopefully those guys are back as soon as possible. But when we get back here for our final segment, we'll be talking a bit about that Denver game and what to expect in that. So stay tuned for that. But this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Wander off from pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning, and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts in their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry. You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in there. How'd you hear about us box so they know we sent you? Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. And we are back. Our final segment of this Tuesday edition of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with Spencer Schultz. And Spencer, after 3 crazy, wild games for this Ravens team, Baltimore now travels to Denver. Their second straight road game to play against this Denver Broncos team. It'll be a 4:25 p.m. game. Mile High is different. It's different up there. Me being or following the Denver Nuggets, I know a thing or two about that. The Ravens have had a couple memories up there at Mile High for sure, but this is a Denver team now led by Teddy Bridgewater, another Louisville great. He'll be matching up with Lamar Jackson, who obviously is a Louisville great himself. This Denver defense, a revamped secondary room, they've played well. They're undefeated for a reason. People will point to the schedule and say it's a schedule thing. That's why they're 3-0. It seems like this might be the first real big test for Denver. But Spencer, what are you expecting in this game for the Ravens and the Broncos? Do you think that this is a game that the Broncos finally run into a pretty good opponent and all of a sudden they're not the same team, or is this Denver team for real?
I think this Denver team is well coached and that they are for real in a way. Did they beat up on some bad teams? Absolutely. But I think that one of the best indications of a good team is beating bad teams. And they're going to get a Ravens team that's without a lot of players still. No Marcus Peters, no J.K. Dobbins, no Gus Edwards. Guys are starting to get beat up. Who knows who the Ravens are going to have? But on the defensive side of the football, they have one of the most underrated edge defender linebacker types. I guess he's more of a true inside linebacker, actually. But Josie Jewell has been playing at an outstanding level. Von Miller is playing just like he always has. I think he's racked up 4 sacks already in 3 games. They've been using him on stunts, and he has been gliding through offensive lines like a butter knife through butter, especially on stunts. Pro Football Focus had him, I believe, with 15 pressures already. So they've done a good job. They've got a really competent back end featuring Kareem Jackson, a veteran safety, Alex Johnson, a linebacker they have that runs, that hits, that rushes the passer. He's solid in coverage. He's a blitzing factor. They've got Patrick Surtain out there, Bryce Callahan, a really strong slot corner, and of course, Justin Simmons on that back end, who's been one of the top safeties in football over the last couple of years. So I think this Broncos team definitely is for real. I think they have a lot of talent, a lot of capacity to do damage as a defense. This Ravens offensive line now is probably going to be without Ronnie Stanley for quite some time. So it looks like it's going to be McCary and it's going to be Villanueva for the foreseeable future. And guess who plays over Patrick McCary? Von Miller. That's going to be tough. Luckily for the Ravens, the Broncos don't have Bradley Chubb. They're still looking to try and figure out some more edge rushing options. They've got Malik Reed out there, and they've got some interior guys like Shelby Harris and Dre Jones and some guys that can do a little bit of damage up the middle. But with Von Miller, who has a ton of athleticism, length, savvy, and IQ, everything against Patrick McCary, you better hope that Pat Ricard and Eric Tomlinson and Mark Andrews and the backs and everyone involved is going to be doing everything they can to lend a helping hand. One of the ways I think that the Ravens like to try to mitigate that is by using play action passes where they use a puller, which would be a power play action, where the left guard, whether it's Powers or Cleveland, will pull from the left guard position into a play action. That kind of invites Von Miller to rush upfield, and then you kind of trap him and hit him with contact early. The Ravens have done that to some good pass rushers over the years, and I think that's another way that they can kind of mitigate it. But this is a really well-coached unit that runs a lot of too-high looks in Vic Fangio's too-high defense that can really, really, really hurt offenses. So I'm excited to see this matchup, and I think this could be definitely a game where a good tackling defense. We're talking about all the Ravens tackling problems. Well, no player on the Broncos defense has missed more than 2 tackles. I don't think this run game is going to be able to really go dominate the Broncos. But can they get some chunk plays? Can Lamar Jackson always hurt you? Yeah, absolutely. But I think this is going to be a game where the defense has to finally pick up the slack and is able to make a stand and play 4 quarters of complete football, because John Harbaugh talked about that prior to this Lions game. And guess what? They didn't do it. They melted down in the second half. Is that probably because they just simply didn't have enough warm bodies to put on the field? Yes, but we don't know if those guys are going to come back. So they're facing a pretty explosive defense yet again that, the offense is probably going to be in a little tiny bit over its head. Lamar Jackson won't, but they're going to have to make plays. And I think this is going to be a close game.
Yeah, this should be a really good game. And I agree, Spencer. Maybe it comes down to the wire once again, because the Ravens have had those 3 crazy finishes so far. And Spencer, taking a step back, this really has been, the season doesn't even feel real almost, because of just how wild it has been. The injuries to before the year, then the 3 crazy finishes. I mean, how insane has this season been for you so far?
It's been nuts to watch. At the end of the day, I am a Baltimore Ravens fan. I try to stay as objective as possible, utilize advanced metrics, be honest about the tape, everything in between. That's what I want to do, but it's been a lot of fun. It's been very exciting. It's taken us through a whirlwind of emotions, and I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon. It does feel like Lamar Jackson has simply started to truly shoulder and carry this team. He has had 4 go-ahead drives in the fourth quarter in 3 games. So he's going to keep going. He's going to keep grinding. He's going to stay in the pocket. He's going to stay poised. He's going to make plays when he needs to, and he's going to have the Ravens in positions to win a lot of games late. So, that tilt is always one that can be an inch or 2 short and end up losing you a game, an inch here, an inch there at the end of the game. But feels like the Ravens are going to continue, due to injury and due to fatigue, be forced to play a lot of really close games, or games where they might have to trail and try and make some valiant comebacks. But Lamar Jackson's up to the task. And as a guy who doesn't have an extension yet and is trying to use every game as another step to earn himself more money and prove his worth further and further than he already has, it's a dangerous game the Ravens are playing, but it's a hell of a game Lamar Jackson's playing. So I'm having a blast watching it. I love watching Lamar Jackson. I think he is firmly in the MVP conversation for his heroics so far, especially over the last 2 weeks, and considering he put the Ravens in a position to win in Las Vegas as well. So maybe the touchdown and interception stats aren't showing that right now, but hey, Lamar Jackson is more than the box score. He's making plays. It's fun to watch, and I'm excited for the rest of this Ravens season.
Yeah, exactly. It is more than the box score, and Lamar Jackson is certainly proving that for sure. And Spencer, finally, has your outlook, obviously the injuries kind of changed a lot of people's outlook on the season. Based off of how they've performed so far with a lot of new faces on this team, they are 2-1. A lot, it's arguable they could be 3-0 right now. They could be 0-3 right now. How has your outlook on this team changed ever since the injuries and now seeing them play through 3 weeks?
Well, it wavered a little bit after week 1, because I think we saw a team that had such issues protecting the quarterback that it starts to limit what you can do. And knowing that Marcus Peters just went down, and I originally, right before Gus Edwards and Marcus Peters went down, I did my preseason NFL 2021 predictions for win-loss. I had the Ravens coming in second in the division at 12-5. Brown's taking it in its 12-5 split. But at this point, week 1, I kind of was like, it's not shocking if this is an 8-9 or 9-8 football team. And I think it's safe to say they could be somewhere right between there. I think depending on the rest of their injury luck in a long season, they could be truly limited. But as long as Lamar Jackson is healthy and as long as he has a chance, Lamar Jackson is going to win the Ravens at least 9 games. So I think they're somewhere in between that 9 and 12 win range. And that sounds like more of 10 or 11 wins for the Ravens this year and another playoff berth likely. and with them able to sneak into the playoffs and see if they can't go right the wrongs of the last couple losses and go, win a game or two and continue to feel good about themselves. But just losing an all-pro corner, losing two really high caliber running backs, and Ronnie Stanley not being healthy has started to hurt. But hey, they're about to get Rashad Bateman and Miles Boykin back. Rashad Bateman, I'm excited to see what he can do, and I think he's going to do some serious damage once he gets fully integrated into this offense in the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm writing that, 9 very, very low end, and I'll say 13 is a high end, but the back half of the schedule for the Ravens is pretty brutal. So taking that into account, hopefully the Ravens can win a couple games here and kind of pad their record a little bit before heading into a really tough stretch where 5 of the last 7 games are against those divisional opponents, including in the guys who aren't divisional opponents. That's Green Bay and that's Los Angeles, the Rams. So the Ravens have a tough road ahead, but they've shown that resiliency before, and they haven't slowed down. The week 1 loss they could have easily won. The 2 wins they could have lost. So this season's been all out of sorts, but it's been fun nonetheless. But Spencer, that's all I have for you today. For everybody out there who's listening, where can people find your stuff?
You can find me at BaltimoreBeatdown.com. We're a subsidiary of Vox Media and SB Nation covering the Baltimore Ravens. I just posted an article there about how ridiculous what Lamar Jackson's doing in terms of pushing the ball down the field is right now. You can also find me on Twitter at Ravens4Dummies. That's the number 4. I manage social media on Instagram. So if you're on Instagram and like to get a little actual football content on there that's not, a 13-year-old kid making some cool graphics, then you can find that at @BMore_Beatdown, I believe, as well. So I appreciate it, Kevin. Hope you guys had a great week. You can also find T-shirts and merchandise. I started to kick some of those up, including a T-shirt I made that says 66 yards, tuck it. That's available at podcastbeatdownmerch.com. That's podcastbeatdownmerch.com. You can find my podcast, Baltimore Beatdown Podcast, available on all RSS feeds. That's Google, that's Spotify, that's Apple, anywhere you want, as well as YouTube. So thank you guys so much. And thank you, Kevin, for having me on. And hopefully we're looking at a Ravens team that's 3-1 after a tough, well-fought, well-deserved win in Denver next week.
Yeah, I'm hoping. And be sure to check out Spencer's work and the merch. Don't forget about the merch. Check it all out. Spencer does some great work for everything. But that's all I have for you today here on Locked On Ravens. When we get back here tomorrow, we'll be answering your mailbag questions. So stay tuned for that, and I will see you tomorrow.